Okay, this is Lenny Dellarocca with South Florida Poetry Journal, SoFloPoJo, along with Michael Mack and O'Mara and Sally Naylor, here to talk with Jim Daniels at the 2019 Miami Book Fair. Hello and welcome, Jim.
Hi, Lenny. It's great to be here.
Well, thanks for being here. Now, I wanted to get into first with you a little bit because you have some history here in Miami, yes?
Yes.
Let's hear a little bit about how you're connected to Miami.
Well, in 1992-93, I was a visiting professor at Florida International.
Okay.
And my wife, Kristen Kovacic, who's an author presenting at this year's book fair, worked at the book fair.
Oh, cool.
And so I got to know the book fair right away.
Nice.
That was the year of Hurricane Andrew, so it was a very
that's right.
interesting and challenging year to be here.
Yeah.
It was exciting, too.
And you taught here?
Yeah, at Florida International in our MFA program there.
Okay.
Sally was one of my students.
That's right, that's right. Sally, and I believe you said you knew Barbara Nightingale, who's also with the journal.
Yeah, it's great to come back and see old friends.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people, because my wife was at the book fair and I was at FIU, we managed to touch base with most of the local writing community.
Everybody, kind of rub elbows with the whole,
Yeah.
Where are you living now?
In Pittsburgh.
In Pittsburgh.
Yeah, I teach at Carnegie Mellon University up there.
Okay. And of course, your poetry is something that we're pretty familiar with, but you also have, is it another book that's out that's not poetry? Is that?
I have my 6th book of short fiction came out this past year called The Perp Walk. And so I alternate short flash fiction pieces with longer stories, but some of the short pieces are really prose poems.
Okay.
So
there's that, right? Where's the line drawn between a prose poem and flash fiction? I guess I don't know. There's so much hybrid, right? There's a lot of hybrid stuff that it's like, who knows? I guess what's the difference? What you call it, right?
Yeah, and the other reason I'm here is an anthology of poetry. So my anthology editor hat is on.
Okay, cool.
It's,
what's the name of that?
That's called Respect, the Poetry of Detroit Music.
Okay, and that's right up my alley.
That is a lot of fun to put together.
Yeah.
It's poetry and lyrics dealing with the music of Detroit. Yeah.
So you have, who's some of the artists that you...
Well, we cover everybody in one way or another. So we have it divided into blues, jazz, soul, rock, and hip-hop, techno.
Cool.
Because Detroit has had innovators. Like, there are certain poems I had to have, like Nikki Giovanni's poem for Aretha needed to be in there.
Yeah.
And Patricia Smith has a Motown crown, which is a crown of sonnets, which is just incredible. Yeah. To write a crown of sonnets about anything, but it's all about the music. I really wanted that one too.
Yeah.
And we have lyrics from people like Eminem and Paul Simon and Gordon Lightfoot. And
so you have a whole spectrum.
Yeah.
So people of any age, because you're talking, if it's Eminem, there's younger folks might identify, and then you got the old fogies like me who will identify with Aretha.
Yeah, well, I'm an old fogey too, so I had to do a little work to get up to speed with the rap and hip hop stuff.
Sure, yeah, I wouldn't have a clue.
But there's a stream that connects to, obviously, poetry and the traditional, like, Motown music. Yeah.
How do you divide your discipline? When we were talking the different, the flash fiction and prose, and then you write poetry. Are you able to transition? Are you able to say, you'll be writing some poems, and then are you able to go right from writing poetry into fiction, or you know what I'm saying? There's or is it a smooth transition, or is there bumps in the road in between, or how does that work?
I jump around a lot,
and
it's nice. Well, and I steal from myself.
There you go.
So sometimes something that shows up in a poem ends up showing up in a story later on. And actually, I've also written and produced 4 short films. And
really?
2 of those are based on short stories, and one of them is actually a poem film.
Cool.
So we filmed the poem. So
is that somewhere online that folks can see it? Do you know what the website is?
It's on Vimeo.
Okay.
And if you
can search under Jim Daniels or
The End of Blessings is the name of it. And the director, he's been my partner on 3 of these films. His name is John Rice. So his name might be there.
Interesting.
But yeah, so I like switching around. If I get stuck in one genre, I just jump to another.
Something else,
and so there's not a clean break. Some days, a lot of times my writing day starts with revision.
Okay.
Because I'm not staring at the blank screen. There's something up there to play around with.
Gotcha.
And then and usually it's with poetry, and then I'll maybe ease into something that might be a story.
Yeah, interesting. Is there anything you would like to read for us? I'd like to. Is there something out of what book is that?
This is a street calligraphy.
Okay.
And it came out in 2017.
Okay.
So it's.
We'd love to hear something if you have anything you'd like to read.
This is a little bit longer, but it kind of represents a focus of a lot of the work that I've done in terms of. I'm a narrative writer, generally, so it's not that big of a jump for me to move from poetry to fiction. So I had people tell me in my early days as a poet, well, you should be writing fiction. But I'm stubborn. I love the compression of poetry. So this is a kind of an introduction to where I grew up in Detroit that I write a lot about. It's called Street Calligraphy, the title poem. Shingles blown from roofs or spacers pried from between concrete slabs lasted longer than chalk, but not forever. Chalk was school. Nobody bought chalk. Plaster worked, cracked drywall heaped for trash. We dusted its edges against concrete in gritty, deliberate scrawl. What we lacked in depth, we made up for with blatant lies or cruel wishes. The truth was off its hinges or hidden in the blind spot the world had for us, somewhere beyond mirrors or jewelry. Nothing harder than concrete, certainly not our skin, certainly not glass. I stashed shingles and plaster beneath the broken brick in a field of weeds. We marked our narrow baseball diamonds, baselines squeezed into the choked vein of our streets. The only fair balls shot right down the middle, then rolled and rolled, coming to rest under parked cars or against distant curbs. Our balls were taped with or rubber, our bats plastic or cracked and nailed, our mitts theoretical. We drew football yard markers and end zone designs. Cars served as both obstacle and blocker. Ricochets off windshields were ruled complete. Leaked oil and antifreeze marked parking spots. The cruel whimsy of safety glass lay sprinkled against the curb like the dice of large insects or small rodents. We had no tears and nothing with which to make tears. Don't get me wrong, I wish we had tears to dilute the street, drain anger, erase bitterness, soften the fist. Tar blackened our fingers, tacky in summer, as we drew dark lines, stickmen, designed for crude cursing, pure permanent wobble. We came equipped to trash each other, short-witted, dim-sighted, prone to slamming on brakes, leaving rubber lines to be examined like near misses. Down the empty eyes of manhole covers, we shoved our true messages, unread in their dark falling disappearance. I wrote, "Find me," on a scrap of paper with a nub of bitten pencil. Alone on the curb, I sat watching rain darken cement till all dots connected. It smelled like our lives then, the damp glisten of time, the baited shove toward our futures. Tar, tell me anything before the torn slice of roof disintegrates into an articulate mirage. Our streets, a book permanently open to the same 2 pages, demanding to be memorized.
Wow. That's fabulous. The connecting of the writing from the chalkboard to the bases on the ball field, to the writing the note to the tire marks, and this whole business of the calligraphy and the lines and the writing. In contrast today with everything being on a screen, this whole idea of digital, and this is so analog. It's just a wonderful, it's an amazing piece.
Well, thanks. It's really kind of about becoming a writer.
Yeah.
Those little notes saying "find me" is poetry.
Fantastic. Well, I don't know how much longer we have. We only have, what, about 10, 15 minutes with you. I know you have a reading coming up at noon.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, right here, down in building somewhere.
Yeah,
I don't
I need to look it up.
Sally, do you have a question for him? You want to talk?
You know, I was first introduced to your work with Clocking Out, which I think is just a very fine book of short lyric poems. But your journey to this street calligraphy just fascinates me. And can you describe that? Or it's exciting for me to just see the more multifaceted directions and capacities that you seem now to possess. I don't know, is that your reality, or am I just making
thank
it
you.
up?
I'm glad you noticed that. Well, yeah, I think I started out writing these pretty straightforward short poems, and I read this book that was by Václav Havel. It was interviews with Václav Havel, who was playwright and the first president of the Czech Republic.
Yeah.
And there was this great little response where he was talking about writing, not politics, but they were always connected with him. But he said, well, there comes a stage at which, and he said, I think he used the age at around age 35. That can come at any point, depending on what your career is like. But he said, where you can go on repeating the kind of writing that you've had success with, or you can take a crucial step and try and push yourself into something new. And when I read that, I was probably around that age, and it really spoke to me in terms of, hey, am I challenging myself enough as a writer? And I decided that no.
And so you pushed.
And one of the things I got interested in, because for whatever reason, it's not that like I never use any metaphorical language, but there are some poets use a lot more than I do.
Sure.
I tend to be more direct.
Yeah.
But I was figuring, what I decided to play around with was simultaneous narratives, where you tell more than one story in the same poem, and the tension between the two stories operates and it works in the same way that a metaphor works.
Okay.
Where these two things don't seem alike, but once you point it out, then there's some sort of moment.
That is metaphorical, sure.
Yeah. So that was one thing that I've tried to do. And another thing was simply writing more fiction and doing the film stuff just to keep myself challenged and fresh. And, and the film work has influenced the writing too, just in terms of, with film editing is so much like revising a poem. It's fascinating because you're sitting there, splicing a film together, and you're making all these little cuts.
Sure.
And you're thinking, oh, is this really going to make any difference?
Yeah.
But they add up.
Yeah.
Because in a film, you're dealing with real time, so anytime you can tighten it up, it's better.
Absolutely.
And in poetry, obviously, compression is something that defines poetry. So honing my skills, learning how to edit films has really helped, I think, in terms of revising poems.
That's really an interesting note to add into that, because of the cinema, film, and poetry. The poetry's images often, so you've got that in there, so doing the both of them seems like one kind of leads into another one. Poetry, film, we on the journal we have one or two films.
Yeah, you
of poetry,
should take a look at the end of the blessings, because
Absolutely.
what we did, so a lot of poetry films do one of two things. One, they have voiceover reading the poem.
Okay.
Or two, they'll have the text
in
front of the imagery. And ours is basically has no words in it. It's just a visual manifestation of this poem. The only words that are spoken are a few words of shouted Italian. And so we really worked a lot on the soundtrack. So it has a very percussive soundtrack. But it's we said, no, if we're going to make a 10-minute film, let's just go out there and say, take the words out and see if we can just create it completely visual. You can see whether it works or not, but it was a good thing to try.
It's just even if it's that's we've done a few on the site, like I said, and I just think it's a fascinating field. It's poetry just with visual images.
Yeah, and the technology has really allowed it.
Yeah.
And so people are using it.
Fabulous. Well, listen, we're going to end it here because I know you have to run. And I thank you so much for coming in with us, and have a great reading over at your Building 8 or wherever you're going to be today.
Okay, well, thanks a lot. It's a pleasure.